concerning Shimshon when we read about Shimshon. As Amira said, Shoftim is full of stories like what is going on here. Okay, let's start. With women, especially. With women. It seems like he's got an issue with women. And so we want to know, how could someone who's supposed to be a tzaddik, a shofet, be involved with such affairs that what Chazal teach us, it's the opposite of a tzaddik, right? So that's a good question. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, fabulous. He's a Nazir from utero, from in the womb, and he seems like he has everything going for him to be able to overcome any of the temptations that he seems to fall into. So what's up with that? Anything else? Those are the big questions. Those are the big questions, right? So yes, he is a shofet. Yes, he is in shoftim. If it got into the Sefer Shoftim, it means every generation has what to learn from it, right? Because the stories that got into Tanakh are the ones relevant for all generations. And we know that we're fighting a war in Gaza now, which is where his fall was. That's the big finale of Shimshon, when he brought the whole building down, and he's asking Hashem, please allow me to take Nekama from the Plishtim for what they did. And Hashem grants him. He gives him again back the Ruach HaKodesh, and everything topples on the Plishtim, and there was a great victory. At the end of the book, it says again, there's a few chapters devoted for Shimshon. At the end of the first stories that we read about him, we're told that he ruled as a shofet for 20 years. And then by the end of the 16th chapter, at the end of the conclusion of the summation of the stories about him, again, it's repeated, and Chazal want to know, why is it repeated? And that he ruled as a shofet for 20 years. And the conclusion is, because the impression that he made, especially on the Plishtim, on the enemy camp, was so profound that they continued to fear him for 20 years after his rule. And so where do we see all of that in the stories? Right? How do we understand his leadership? Do we see that he's followed by anybody? Or do his people accept him as a shofet? From the reading of the chapters, do we read anything that he is a shofet b'Yisrael? What do we notice? He functions alone. He's like a lone wolf, functioning. But what is this going into the enemy camp, Plishtim, marrying this woman? Chazal say, of course, you can't assume that he didn't convert them. Obviously, he converted them, but obviously it was also for the reason of marriage. So where's the L'Shem Shamayim of these women that he's converting to get married? And so the questions are great. And what's going on? And how could this happen to a person who was designated, who has kadosh, something muvdal, something set aside for kedusha? How could someone like that fall into the affairs that he falls into? And why, if you remember, when the first time Shimshon comes to his parents and say, I saw this woman in Timnata, she looks good in my eyes, I want to marry her, what is his parents' reaction? There aren't enough Jewish girls around here that you have to look at this shiksa from Timnata. Like, what's going on here? And which is a question us as readers pop into our head naturally. But then, right after that, after his parents have their reaction, what does the Navi say? What does Sefer Shoftim say, which was written by Shmuel and Navi? What does it say there? It was all from God, and they didn't know, and the parents did not know that all of this was orchestrated by Hashem, so that Shimshon can somehow enter the enemy camp to get back at the Plishtim for being so horrible to Am Yisrael. So there's a divine plan there. You see? And the Navi himself is telling us that was the plan. So, but then again, the question is, what kind of a plan is that? It seems like it's so embroiled in Chilul Hashem, Chas v'shalom. Every step of the way, what is this shofet doing? He's a shofet. Where's shofet? How shofet? What shofet? This kind of leaders. Now, what was the situation of Am Yisrael at this time? Right. Okay. The whole Sefer Shoftim is no king, but there's ups and downs in this roller coaster of Am Yisrael's sins. Hashem sends them the patch, sends them the enemy to get some sense into them, to do tshuva. He sends them the shofet. They do tshuva. They're okay for 40, 80 years. And then the whole cycle begins again and again and again, which was Mira speaking about. The time period in this like 400-year period of the shoftim or so, the situation of Am Yisrael, the spiritual situation of Am Yisrael was in a very, very low state, that they didn't even merit a leader with a designation of a leader. The leader that they needed to get to keep them going and not being obliterated by the Plishtim at that time, which were the enemy that Hashem sent to put them into their place, they weren't worthy of any leader, really. So if they're not worthy of a leader, because this is something the generation has to be worthy of, but Hashem doesn't forsake his people. Hashem still has the best interest of Am Yisrael. So he's going to sneak in a leader that's not going to be recognized as a leader. You follow? That's Shimshon's role. He's a leader, a lone wolf, no followers, no army following him. He himself, with his gevura, is going to undo the enemy without even the recognition of his own people that that's what he's doing. If you remember, when he took avenge for something that there was what? No, the lion was before. This was a testimony of his gvura. A lot of people speak about Shimshon's physical strength, the gevura of Shimshon, but he was like beyond anything in terms of his ruchnius. We'll see what Rashi says on the blessing of Yaakov Avinu to Dan, and he's from Shevet Dan, that the whole bracha of Yaakov Avinu for Dan was all about Shimshon. In Yaakov Avinu's Ruach HaKodesh, he understood, oh my gosh, Mashiach, no less than Mashiach, is going to come from Dan, and he had in mind Shimshon. We have to understand what's going on with Shimshon. We don't understand a thing, just like we don't understand anything about Mashiach. Just as we don't understand anything of the unfolding history of the Jewish people, how could this be a good thing? And Be'ezrat Hashem, one second, I want to dedicate the learning, of course, for the Atzlacha of Giborei Israel of today, Chayalei Tzva Haganah Israel. They should do the job. They should go into Aza. They should finish the job. What they say about Shimshon, Vehechel Lefayim, he began the work of undoing the enemy, but he wasn't given the opportunity to finish. The lashon of concerning Shimshon is Vehechel. He began the job. He began, but he didn't finish. Why didn't he finish? Because a generation wasn't meritorious enough for the revelation of the Mashiach of that time. And when the generation has to merit the finishing of the job. And Be'ezrat Hashem, with those words, this generation now, with Chayalei Tzva Haganah Yisrael, Giborei Israel, now in Aza, now in Eretz Plishtim, over there, we merit them to be able to finish the job and have Gilui Elokut, Gilui Hashem, Shrat HaShechina, Mashiach now, Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. And with that, I want to give koach, really, to the Chayalim, that the Gvura, the intentions of Shimshon, of going into Aza and going to do what he did then, that they should merit the fulfillment of what he began. It should finish now. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Now, you had a question before I go into the sources? The judges are before the kings. Shoftim are before the kings when there was no kings. After Shoftim, then Shmuel and Navi comes, and the people at that time said, we want a king.
All right. So with Shoftim, how does Shimshon, where does he come in Shoftim? Is he
towards the end of the book, towards the end of the Tkufa?
The one that
Yes, this is done.
No, but can I just say, I think it was Esther not.
I can't go there. You're taking us off topic. I'm sorry. The time is very, very limited.
All right, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, so I understand. Okay, so it's
We're all, every speaker's given just not so much time, and so we chose a topic, and we have to, okay. So now, so let's go to, are there any more notes? Okay, so without further ado. Okay, so I mean, the first source that I brought is actually the tefillah of Shimshon, Hagibor. Shimshon, when right before he topples the whole house down on him and killing, who did he kill at that point? Who was there? 3,000 spectators. Who were amongst the 3,000 spectators? All of the heads, the ministers, the army generals, the big wigs, the master headquarters of Hamas, of Gaza, of Plishtim, and they're all there, right? They're all there, and men and women. Aside from that, and this is his great nekama, and he's asking Hashem for siyata dishmaya to allow him that his last thing that he does with his life is take nekama from the Plishtim. Okay, so he's working alone. He's got no army. He had to somehow figure out a plan to get into Plishtim. There had to be like I said, the OUisrael were not meritorious. They were divided, were divisive. There's avodah zarah. Who knows what was going on at that point? Like, they're sinful. They're not in the best shape spiritually to merit even a leader with the designation, like a known, like to be accepting of a leader. He was a shofet, but very disrespected and disregarded. But somehow the job had to be done. Somehow someone had to deal with the Plishtim. The way to get in is from a personal way, somehow getting as an only person, as an individual, to enter into the enemy camp without arousing the anger of the Plishtim to say, Shimshon, what he did to us, because he did a lot of trouble for them, right? Once he got in, they're going to ascribe it to an individual person and his mishagas, and not as a shaliach of OUisrael. Because if they would have perceived him as a shaliach of OUisrael, then the Plishtim would have wanted to take nekama, revenge, not only of him, but also send battalions into Eretz Yisrael, in OUisrael, and take revenge of them. So he had to function in very ingenious, very creative ways that made him seem like this guy is only about himself, his taiva with women. He has to get it, but really all of that was a ruse to get him there, to undermine, from within them, to use taivas that they understood. They understand lust and women, and all of the sordid stories that happened to him with the women, and all of the betrayals of the Plishtim against his wives, and getting them to say the secret of the riddles, and getting them to divulge all kinds of other information about him, and then taking his intended wife and giving her to somebody else to get married, and to create a scenario of a person enraged over the personal injustice to him, so that he can then take revenge on them, but in his mind, he's not taking revenge for any personal affront to him. This is a way to fell a lot of Plishtim, enemies of Israel, without arousing their anger against all of OUisrael. This is an individual matter between Shimshon and us. You follow? He's undercover completely. He's completely undercover. So now, these are the words that he says, and there was a famous song that's put to it, and I was hoping to finish in time to be able to. I brought a Bluetooth to actually put the song on and dance with you, also in the help of Tzahal today. But in any case, we'll either get to it or we won't. Source number 1, Vayikra Shimshon el Hashem, Vayomer Adonai Elohim zachreni na v'chaskeni na, ach hapam hazeh haElohim v'inakma nekam achat mishtei einai miplishtim. As you know, his eyes, after the Delilah story, they cut off his hair, which was the source of his gevura, his nazirut for kedusha. Once you take that away, so there's like a removal of the hashrat hashchina, the koach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was there. We have to understand that it's such a complicated story. But he says, I want to revenge. So the English is here. Then Samson called to God, O sovereign God, please remember me and give me strength just this once, O God, to take revenge of the Philistines, if only for one of my two eyes that they gouged out. Why is he only asking for the revenge of one eye that they took him? Why not both eyes? And who else do we know that says, now what's he about to do, by the way, in this? What's the next thing? Yeah, and then what is that? What did he do? He killed himself. It was a suicide mission to benefit Klal Yisrael because he got rid of a lot of the heads of the state of Plishtim at that time, and with that instilled the fear of the rest of the Plishtim that for 20 years after that Shimshon did this, his impression, the kedusha, the azut of kedusha that he had, made such an impression on them that they didn't dare start up with the Jewish people for 20 years after Shimshon died. As he was a shofet for 20 years in life, he continued to be that for 20 years after. It's only after he died that everyone chapped what he was there for, what he did. It was Mesiras Nefesh for OUisrael. And if his people didn't recognize him before, because remember, once he did the whole business with, I'm sorry, I'm gonna throw it, and if you don't know, go back and read the chapters from 13 to 16 concerning Samson. But for those who read the chapters, he wanted to take revenge over this affront of his wife being taken and given to another man by her parents and all kinds of things, and he promised them, and also they got answers of riddles for them, and he had to owe them a lot of money for this, and he took revenge upon them and killed a lot of people at that time. At a certain point, he had to flee Eretz Plishtim and go back to Eretz Yisrael, and Shei Yehuda meet up with him, and they say, what are you doing? You want to get us all killed? They didn't understand that he was working on their behalf, that the whole reason he's there was to save them, that any revenge that the Plishtim will want to take, they'll understand it as a lone person, undercover, not understanding that he's a shaliach of OUisrael there. And he doesn't tell them. He's like, oh, okay, I'm saving your life, but you don't get it, but that's okay. I know what I'm doing. And he always had this Ruach Hashem, Tzolachat Alav. Many times it says that before he did something, there was the Ruach Hashem that came over him. Lefa'em, like a pa'amon. The Hashrat HaShechina, it wasn't always with him. It was with him, and then left him, and then came back to him. What was that? That was, the sources say, was a training ground for Shimshon to be able to function even when he doesn't have the siyata dishmaya of the Ruach HaKodesh falling on him. He was a kadosh from Beten, from Rechem, from the womb. He was a kadosh. And so the enticements, the taiva of the world didn't have a taste for him. Like anything he did of something that to us would seem like a taiva dika thing, like a desire for women, for him it was completely l'shem shamayim. He was able to say, I'm doing this, I'm not tainted by this act. It's not bringing me down. I'm still holding him like kedusha, and his whole life, Hashem brought him to a place of kedusha, of hashrat hashchina, ruach Hashem was upon him, the spirit of Hashem was upon him, and then removed to get him to practice what it's like not to feel when ruach Hashem is there. But why does he need to have ruach Hashem not there with him? What does he have to have? Because now the next sources will understand, okay? What's going on with Dan? What is Shefet Dan about? What was the bracha of Yaakov Avinu to Dan, and how does this have to do with Shimshon? So source number 2. Dan yadin amo ke'echad shiftei Yisrael. This is Yaakov Avinu to Dan on his deathbed. Yehi Dan nachash alei derech shfifon alei orach hanoshech ikvei sus veipol rochvo achor lishuatcha kiviti Hashem. Dan shall govern his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the road, a viper by the path. that bites the horse's heels so that his rider is thrown backward. I wait for your deliverance, Hashem. Very interesting that why is Yaakov Avinu ending his bracha, which is, he doesn't do any other shevet. Every other shevet he speaks to in second person directly to the shevet that he's speaking to. All of a sudden, in the middle, he's like, he's turning to Hashem and saying, "Lishvatcha kiviti Hashem." I'm longing for your salvation, Hashem. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's on the way. On the way. A lot more to it, but yes. So let's look at what Rashi says. Okay. On Ke'echad Shiftei Yisrael. We'll just go directly to the English, just to save time. Dan will avenge his people. Dan shall govern his people. Rashi says that means he will avenge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. He will avenge his people from the Plishtim, like when he will avenge his people from Plishtim. So when Yaakov Avinu is blessing Dan in his Ruach HaKodesh, he sees the unfolding of all of history. He sees this time period that there's going to be someone from Shevet Dan, Shimshon, that's going to avenge his people, OUisrael. I'm continuing, like one of the tribes of Israel, all Israel will be like one with him. In other words, he single-handedly will take on the job of all of the Shvatim, and he will avenge them all. Concerning Shimshon, he uttered this prophecy. We can also explain Ke'echad Shiftei Yisrael, like the special one of the tribes, namely David, who came from Yehuda. A reference to Mashiach. Okay. Now Shfifon, about what is this thing called? Why is Dan compared to a nachash, a viper? This is a snake, and I say it is given this appellation because it bites, And a snake also works alone. He doesn't need any help from anybody else, and he sneaks. And the people are like, he sneaks, he slithers on the ground, he sneaks, he bites, and then the person dies. That's Shimshon. He snuck into the enemy camp, into Eretz Plishtim, like a nachash. No one is suspecting him that he has, what else is going on. And in the opportune moments, he hits them with the poison, and he does away with them. Okay, let's continue. The second, which bites the horse's heel, so is the habit of a snake. He, Yaakov, compares him, Dan, to a snake which bites a horse's heels and causes its rider to fall backwards. Although it does not touch him. We find it does not touch him. Does not touch who? What? Shimshon. The snake is not affected by what he bit. So too, when Shimshon goes into the enemy camp, into Tum'ah, into the realm of Tumah and Klippa and women and that whole Klippa and Tumah that it's involved, the Goyish women, what are you talking about? Shimshon had to go into such places far from Kedusha to infiltrate that area in order to uproot the Klippa, the Tumah, the threat of Kedusha to OUisrael coming from Eretz Plishtim. What's the best way to combat and obliterate the Klipot, Tumah? Those of you who know some Hasidus. You go into the realm of Klipot and Tumah, and from that place you undo it. It's a dangerous thing to do if you're not naki, if you're not 100% clean from any of that Klipah. If you're not tainted by the taiva yourself, if you're completely clean, if you're 100% l'shem shamayim in your mission, only such a tzaddik can go to that realm of klipah and do what he did, not get affected by it, and then undo the enemy from there, and come out still pure after that affair. This was done. He's like a nachash that goes into these places, the realms of tum'ah, of impurity, and from there releases the nitzotzot of kedusha. This is not a job for everybody. This is a job for someone on the level of Mashiach, whose job is to turn the whole choshech into Ur, from the realm of the Klipot, that there's no place left not affected by the light of Hashem, including all the realms of Tumah. So let's continue. And Samson gasped, and we find similar in the story of Shimshon. And Samson gasped the two pillars of the center, and those on the roof died. Onkelos renders Nachash as Kechavye Churman, the name of a species of snake who bites, has no antidote. And that is the Tzfoni. It is called Churman because it destroys Cherem, everything. Okay, now Nachash, as you know, what's the gematria of Nachash? 358, the same gematria as Mashiach. Nachash is otiot Mashiach. Okay, and so Shimshon, who's likened to a Nachash, also has the job to undo the bite, the effects of the other Nachash that we know about from the story of Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. If that's the primordial snake brought down the fall of man, our Nachash in our story has such a koach of gvura, of kedusha, spiritually speaking, and it's reflected in the physical, because the physical reflects the spiritual. If he's that strong physically, it means he has a koach at the root and source of it in great high realms of kedusha, of gvura, of kedusha. He has the ability to go down to that place, the realm of Tumah, and bring everything back, to flip everything over, and he is the Nachash of Kedusha, as opposed to the Nachash of Tumah that brought down the whole story. Now, for your salvation, I hope, Hashem, like Lishvotcha kiviti, why does Yaakov Avinu say this? Nitnabeshi nakru Plishtim et einav. He saw. So after Yaakov Avinu gets excited, oh my gosh, we found our Mashiach, and he's in Shevet Dan, and the koach of that is in Shimshon. But then he sees that he's going to die, that he's not going to make it. Yaakov Avinu sees, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And at that point he says, Yishuatcha kiviti Hashem. So if it's not there, so we still have more to hope for, Hashem, because the Yeshua is not going to come from anything else other than you, Hashem. Nitnabeshi nakru Plishtim et einav. He saw that his two eyes are going to be gouged out. V'sofo lomar, and at the end he's going to say, Zachreni na v'chaskeni na af hapam. For your salvation, I hope, O Lord. He Jacob prophesied that the Plishtim would gouge out his eyes, and he, Shimshon, would ultimately say, Hashem, God, remember me now and strengthen me now, only this once. And he's saying, this once, and I'm willing to sacrifice my life. No one knew what I was about when I'm alive. I'm willing to die under this rubble with the enemies. No one's going to know what I did. Now, who does this remind you of? Moshe Rabbeinu, when he said to Hashem, when Hashem said, I'm going to wipe out the nation and start anew from you, what does he say? Mecheni na misifach. If that's the case, Hashem, wipe me out from your book. It's another suicide mission. The Gdolim of the leaders of the Jewish people, they're willing to sacrifice their olam hazeh, their olam haba, everything, just as long as it's going to bring good to Am Yisrael. He was willing to die there, forsaken there under the rubble. You know, it's not like what they have, all the machines now, to be able to find out the bodies under rubbles, like what they needed to do. But by the way, the last final pasuk about Shimshon is that at the end, after this happened, everyone understood what was going on. Am Yisrael woke up. Oh my gosh, he did this for us. He did all of this for us. Vayirdu echav, after he finishes them off over there, and his brothers, vayirdu echav v'chol beit avihu, vayisu oto vayalu vayikberu oto bein tzir'a uvein eshtaol, bekever manoach aviv, v'hu shafat et Yisrael 20 shana. And his brothers and all his father's household came down and carried him and brought him up and buried him between TORAH and Eshtaol in the burying place of Manoach, his father, and he judged Israel 20 years. After he dies, he judged 20 years. We spoke about that. He continued the influence, the magnitude of his self-sacrifice, of what a shofet is. He was recognized more after his death. He was recognized after his death more between. So they went down and they dug, without any machines of what we have today, like under the rubble, to find some remnants of his body to bring him to a kvura be'eretz Yisrael. Okay, so now, what? Yeah, we did. That's the pasuk says. What? The pasuk says. Google it at that point. Okay. Okay, but yes, it's. Okay. Now let's see. Okay. How much time do I have left? I have till 10:15. What? The next speaker is 10:15, so I have 10 minutes. Oy, 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 oy. Okay. Okay, so what do I tell you now? Like, there's a lot here. I'll have to tell you outside. Okay, let's focus. You understood his whole relationship with the women, that this was just a way to sneak him in, to be able to have his story a way to kill a lot of the enemies without arousing the suspicion that he's functioning on behalf of Am Yisrael, so that it's a personal story between him and them. And it worked. Did it work? Yes, it absolutely worked. He didn't have children. He didn't marry, and okay, so that's perfect. And so let's focus. So for the last 10 minutes, let's speak about the eyes. And why is he asking for the revenge of one eye? And why did he say that? This is a good place. Thank you so much. You just gave me my kivun. Okay. So we know that when he went to his parents to ask him, Ima and Abba, I saw this girl. She seems good in my eyes. Yeshara be'einai. Yeshara be'einai. And they said, what? There's not enough Jewish girls around here that you have to go? And then the Navi says, like I said, and they didn't know that it was all from God. The Midrashim and Chazal and the Gemars, they all say, Yeshara be'einai. That's, he was tainted with something of a gaiva there. Because he's such a holy person, Hashem is medakdek with tzaddikim, then the gauging of the eyes are a reference. This is what you sinned with. This is what's going to happen. Now, let's understand this. He is a kadosh mirechem. He is holy from womb, right? What that gave him was like a kedusha, like you can't imagine. His yetzer hara was nothing to him. He was connected to gvura of ezehu gibor hakovesh et yitzro at its source in the supernal world. So anything he wanted to do in this world, he understood about himself. That if I want it, it means it's l'shem shamayim. It must mean that Hashem wants me to. So he wanted to eat, and he wanted to be married, and he wanted to be with a woman. But if I want it, it means that there's a ratzon Hashem behind it, al Hashem shamayim. And he was so used to that, his yetzer hara is like nothing. His gevura is so great that when he saw this woman in Timnata, he said, Yeshara be'inai, if I want it, he took a little bit too much credit for himself. The L'Shem Shamayim was a little bit missing. Because he was all L'Shem Shamayim, but there was a bit, a smidgen of taking I'm taking too, how should I say this? You know what I'm trying to say? Maybe someone can help me. I'm in the game. And if I knew it, he lost a little bit of the humility of ascribing it to Hashem, and he took credit for himself. It was a little bit off on the gaiva, a little bit off, just a little bit, but for someone who was so kadosh like Shimshon, that little bit is a lot. Now, and then the whole story of, fast forward, there's a few women involved in his whole story. When you finally get to Delilah, what's going on there? Why did he tell? He doesn't know that she wanted to get him. She doesn't know that if he's going to tell her the secret of his strength, that she's going to cut off his hair. And why did he make himself so vulnerable? What is that about? So like this. So Ben Yehuda, it's like somewhere in the sources here. So Ben Yehuda and others, and also Mechtav Meliyahu, Rav Dessler has a whole chapter on Shimshon, a whole few pages on Shimshon. Rav Tzadok HaKohen has a lot about him. This is coming now from Rav Tzadok HaKohen. I didn't bring it in the sources. He said like this: Shimshon, his whole life, he's devoting himself to Am Yisrael. Nobody knows about him, and he's okay with that. He's okay. At a certain point, because of this taint, a little bit of gaiva, down the road with Delilah, and this whole game of Hashem sending the Shrat Shechina upon him and then removing it to get him to practice how to be like this way on his own, even when there's no, because when you go down to the realm of Klipot, like Esther Hamalka, at a certain point when she goes down to Achashverosh, she understood, I'm alone here in this place of Tuma and Klipa, and she says, Keli, Keli, Lama Zaftani, because Hashem was not with her then, and she had to dress her Malchus without the divine help. Shimshon was like that, and because he had to go to that realm where the Shekhinah is not going to be with him, and he had to still be Shimshon Hagibo for Am Yisrael. And he's saying, my whole life, I have the siyata dishmaya of this extra dose of gevura because of Hashem. Rav Tzadok says, I want to now, one time, feel what it's like to go into, to understand, to throw myself into the realm of Tuma and Klippa, and from that place muster all the strength that I can against the enemy. From that place. So there was a bit of a downfall. His eyes really did deceive him in terms of, at a certain point, yes, he was L'Shem Shemaim. He never lost the sight of why he's there. But a little bit of his own self-interest got stuck into it. It says he loved her. It says he loved Delilah. He really did love her. And that kind of but he understood what he was going. He was falling at the same time, but at the same time, the L'Shem Shemaim is there, but he's getting involved. And to go into that realm of Klippa, I guess that's what has to happen. Now, to go down even further, he's saying, okay, the source of my strength is my hair. I'm going to divulge the secret of my hair to Delilah, knowing very well that most likely he's going to wake up without it. And it says, and at that point he woke up and he didn't realize that Ruach Hashem wasn't with him, and he tried to get out of the chains and he couldn't, and then the whole story unfolds, and they take him into god-awful places. And so when he says, Nekam and Nakma, let's go to the pasuk, okay, the first source. Let's go back to his final words of when he's asking for it to take revenge. Zachreinina v'chaskeinina. Now, at the lack of, when I don't have my power from above with the siyata dishmaya, I want to muster up within me. Please, Hashem, grant me as a regular human being, without all of this kedusha having to assist me. Help me in this time. Zachreinina v'chaskeinina achapam hazeh. This time, and I should take the revenge of the Plishtim, if only for one of my two eyes. Why one of my two eyes? So let's look at. So, one of my eyes. We have two eyes. One eye. Who says this now? Ben Yehoyada. Okay, look at that. Source number 8. Ribono shel olam, zachor li 22 shana sheshafati Yisrael. Remember me the 22, I don't know where the extra 2 came in here, but remember me this 20 years that I judged Israel. Velo amarti le'echad mehem ha'aver li makel mimakom lamakom. And not once did I ask any of them to do any personal favor for me, like move once, like a stick for me from here to there. Nir'ali, and this is saying, when I didn't ask any favor from anybody from Israel. I didn't take advantage of anybody, not for my position, not if it would have been normal to ask for a cup of water or for anything. I didn't do anything. Just like Shmuel and Navi also had that to him, and also Moshe Rabbeinu also had that tana. Now, so for that Now, why isn't he asking the avenge for the other eye? Because maybe for that taint, maybe for that self-interest of maybe looking at the woman from something from a personal place that's not exactly 100% l'shem shamayim. Okay. Another reason why you have to save me for the eyes, people should see. Please allow me, grant me the privilege of taking revenge of the Plishtim for what all of the trouble they're doing for Eretz Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, because chas v'shalom, if I don't get revenge and they gouged out two of my eyes, what will they say? V'shochad yaver penei, what is it? V'shochad yaver, that bribery blinds the eyes of the tzaddik. V'shochad yaver einei tzaddik, right? Is that the pasuk? It's in Vayikra. V'shochad yaver einei tzaddik. Then when a shofet, if he takes bribes, the punishment of that is blindness, because he didn't. Okay, so there's stories. I'm not going to bring you now, but there's stories about someone who was a dayan in Am Yisrael, and he got blinded with both his eyes, and his prayer was, Hashem, they're going to think that I took bribes, but you know that that's not why I got blinded. But please take away my blindness, so that they chas v'shalom there shouldn't be a chilul Hashem for every time that I judge it. So they should think it's from that. And Hashem made a miracle, and he got back his eyesight. Shlomo Melech is saying, chas v'shalom, I should die without avenging the Plishtim for even one of my eyes, because then they'll think that I took shochet, that I really functioned from a self-interest, and all I did was just for myself and not for Am Yisrael. So allow me to take revenge, that they should see the Mesiris Nefesh of what it means, a leader for the Jewish people, and my love. And it's not about me, because I'm willing to die here. I don't have children, I don't have a wife, I'm far from my homeland, but I'm willing to be buried under and lost under the rubble with the Plishtim as long as I take avenge for Am Yisrael. And so he's asking for the avenge for one of his eyes. And was he granted? Absolutely. That's the koach of Am Yisrael. And